significant rotation transactions. The one that went down today, Chris Paul signing with the Clippers, a 1-year deal for the minimum. Pretty good value for a player who's was a full-time starter last year in San Antonio, and I mean full-time, starting
As
all
full-time as you can get.
Yeah. Actually, if you want to say something about the Clippers, I don't know what it's worth. Bobby Marks cooked up this number earlier. The guys on their bench on their second unit, and if everybody's healthy, which who knows, but the guys in their second unit, and we're talking basically Brook Lopez, Chris Paul, Bradley Beal being the three core guys.
John Collins.
Yeah, John Collins, he says is a starter, but I think he has.
I would flip Collins and Beal, but we'll discuss. Go on.
Well, whatever. He has said they got 287 games of starting last year, so they've got 2 starting units. Now, whether both of them should be starting units is a different situation. But Chris Paul signs with the Clippers. Look, he could have signed somewhere else and gotten a bigger role. Milwaukee was in there. Dallas was in there. Not sure.
Phoenix.
That would have been that Phoenix. I think Chris Paul was interested in Phoenix. I'm not sure the Suns were serious contenders for him at the end. I would be interested to see him. How would that D'Angelo Russell, Chris Paul rotation have worked, McMahon? That would have been interesting.
I think that one was more D'Angelo Russell or Chris Paul, but certainly Milwaukee was an option right up until the end. And listen, he could have gone, he could have gone to Milwaukee and been their starting point guard this season. He chose to go back to the Clippers, and he chose to take a smaller role to be a full-time dad is one big factor.
Yeah, so here's the thing I'm not sure about. So first off, Chris Paul at $3.6 million is an excellent value, even at 40 years old. I think last year he still had a 7 to 1.5 assist to turnover ratio. Still very efficient overall. Still can run your offense. Still will be a great leader. But it was interesting, the Clippers press release about this. Lawrence Frank, his quote, he made it very clear Chris is coming here to be a reserve guard, which. From what I understand, James Harden was on board with this signing. But, McMahon, just in case anybody had any doubts, that James Harden will be the starter. And reserve guard was in there. I think those were key words. Chris Paul obviously came off the bench 2 years ago when he was traded to the Warriors. He didn't choose that situation, but he was traded there. And he came off the bench the majority of the games backing up Steph Curry. But he's been a starter 98% of his career, 95% of his career. But I just think it's interesting that the Clippers made very clear in their release, Chris Paul is coming here to come off the bench. And I'm sure he understands that. I'm sure Harden's on the same page with everything like that. But just think it should be noted that that's what the plan is.
Yeah, that exact sentence is he is joining us as a reserve point guard and is excited to fill whatever role T. Lue asks him to play. Which is interesting.
Something tells me that was a negotiated sentence one way or another.
Yeah, and look, last year he went to San Antonio. I would say there were probably 2 major reasons that he went to the Spurs. Money and a starting role. They offered both. That was part of the negotiation. This is very clear. He's not coming to the Clippers to start. There's no surprises here. There's no, there shouldn't be any bad blood, but there is going to be natural curiosity about how CP3 handles that, right? I mean, just CP3 on a minimum is a tremendous value addition. But is CP3 one of the most competitive, proudest dudes of this generation really going to be okay to come in as a backup who might even sit out from time to time? Might even be an occasional DNP CD behind James Harden?
And Chris Dunn.
Why would it be a DNP CD? I don't really understand that. He's going to immediately be one of the best backup point guards in the league. He was a solid average, if not above average starter last year. I mean, he didn't score a ton. His assist turnovers off the charts. He's still He had like, I think 5 or 6 win shares last year. Like, on a minimum, it's a fantastic signing for the Clippers. And if he plays 18 minutes a game off the bench when they have one guy who can currently dribble, and if you count Bradley Beal 2 on the team, why wouldn't he play every game?
Because Chris Dunn has been their backup.
Well, and there might be nights
Dunn isn't really
where
a point guard. They could play together.
There might be nights where they say, hey, there might be nights where T. Lue says, hey, we need Chris Dunn's on-ball defense more than we need CP3 orchestrating.
Why can't they play both guys? They have one guy who could dribble.
The point is this: the Clippers clearly don't want that possibility to be something that would cause problems. Whether it happens or not, the Clippers want there to be the understanding of, hey, if T. Lue decides one night it's best to leave you out of the rotation, we got to roll with it. That's the point. Not whether it makes sense on a regular basis.
Sure. The guy's a 40-year-old point guard who signed a minimum deal. Like, I don't know.
No,
like,
the guy is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yes, I understand. I understand that. My point is, he could have, as you guys laid out, right? He actively chose to not pick the places where he would have played for. So, while in the past, we all know how Chris has structured his choices on these things, right? This time, the action here, again, actions over words, the action here very clearly says Chris wanted to be back home. And that was all really that I think all of us had heard for months now, was like, whether it was Phoenix, as you said, Brian, I don't know what Phoenix's level of interest was, whether it's Phoenix or LA, after being away from Los Angeles for a while, the motivation pretty clearly seemed to be to get back there and play. And like I said, to me, he just fills a massive need for the Clippers. Chris Dunn's a nice player. I just think those two guys coming off the bench can fit quite well together. And then you roll out there with a second unit with Chris Dunn, Chris Paul, Nick Batum, John Collins, and Brook Lopez. That is a damn good second unit. Roll out there with those 5 guys, and you're going to be cooking if you're the Clippers to me.
Right. At the end of the day, the Clippers' season will be defined by the health of Kawhi Leonard and the effectiveness of James Harden.
I would even just stop at the health of Kawhi Leonard, period.
Right.
That will define their season.
But you need Harden to be effective when it matters.
Yeah, Harden will be fine. But if Kawhi Leonard's healthy, they've got a shot. They've got a shot. If he's not healthy, they're going to be a really good regular season team because they're really deep. People got mad on Twitter today because I made a joke about the Expendables, the movie from all the 90s action heroes from 10, 12 years ago. And so I think Clippers going to be really good. Like we talked about the other day on the pod, I look at them like that. It's a weird comparison because of all the star power, but I compare them sort of that Denver Nuggets team after the Carmelo trade where they had like 11 good players, no real superstars, and won 57 games before losing to Golden State in the first round. I don't know if they have like championship ceiling because all the questions about Kawhi's health, and obviously you have to assume he's probably not going to be healthy just based off his track record, but they've got 10, 11 really good players, and they're going to be able to roll guys out every night.
Backing up your expendables. This is from Stats. The Clippers rotation, this 11 deep that you're talking about, the youngest of them is John Collins, who's going to be 28 before the start of the season. So those 11 guys, the youngest guy will be 28. And only 2 other teams have ever used 11 players in a game, in a single game, not in your rotation.
That are that old?
Where the youngest guy was 28, and that was the Clippers in 2016-17, which I think Chris Paul was in that. He was older than 28, which happened for one game.
Yeah.
And in 1998-99, the Miami Heat did it for 5 games. So it's happened 6 times in the history of the league where you've had every 11 guys 28 or older.
Yeah, and if you're going to rely on really old players, you better have a lot of them, right?
Well, that's true.
They have great depth, but Winnie, that gets back to your point about like Harden's effectiveness absolutely is going to be a huge, huge key for the Clippers. And you can argue the addition of Chris Paul, certainly on paper, should help Harden's effectiveness for no other reason than it's going to get Harden's workload back to something that's manageable. James Harden in his mid-30s should not be 5th in the league in minutes. James Harden in his mid-30s should not have multiple games where his minutes are up in the 40s and he's not subbing out.
You want to hear some of these guys in from the 1998-99 Miami Heat just for a little July fun?
Sure.
We're talking gents like Keith Askins, the great Keith Askins, P.J. Brown, Blue Edwards, Tim Hardaway, Vashawn Leonard, Dan Marley, Jamal Mashburn. Mashburn must have been the youngest on that group. He must have, maybe he was out for a game. Maybe he was out for, he wasn't 28 then, so maybe he was out for a game. Or a couple of games. Terry Mills, Lonzo Mourning, Terry Porter. Those are the Clarence Witherspoon. Those were your 1998-99. I guarantee it was when must have been when Mashburn was out. Yeah, but anyway, I will say this: if you look at what the Clippers did with their offseason, so they gave James Harden a contract. I think I mentioned this the other day, where it was just enough money where he got a raise. He got a $6 million raise, but they kept the full mid-level open, mid-level and biannual. Or not the biannual. I think they were just able to use the mid-level. I think.
No. Oh yeah, you're right. Because they split it. You're right.
So they gave $9 million of it, like 8.75 to Brook Lopez. They gave the rest of their mid-level 5.3 and change or something like that to Bradley Beal. So that's what they split their mid-level, their $14.5 million mid-level between those two guys. And then they give Chris Paul this minimum. So they spend about $18 million and they get Chris Paul, Brook Lopez, and Bradley Beal. Three guys who, Beal did come off the bench for 15 games last year, but basically three guys who were starters last year. So that's value.
Yeah, they
right?
essentially turned Norm Powell into those three guys and John Collins. Like, they got a lot deeper, and they were already a deep team. Like, I think they're going to be, a really, really, really good gate team over 82 games next year. And then, like I said, as far as the 16-game part, James Harden will be who James Harden has been for a while, assuming he stays healthy. Everything with them just comes down to what version of Kawhi are they going to get, and will he show up? And I certainly can understand anybody who would say, yeah, I'm not going to bet on Kawhi. But to me, if you're looking at over-unders for next season, despite having all these old dudes, like to McMahon's point, they have so many good players that they can rotate guys through and still have an 8 or 9 man rotation every night that's going to be really good and at least 2 deep at every position.
I can't wait for our over-under bet that's forthcoming in September or October this year.
I think we probably both are pretty high on the Clippers here. I do think, the idea of Bradley Beal coming off the bench, I don't see that happening.
Brad's going to start.
He's going to start.
Okay, I was going to say he did not enjoy coming off the bench for the 15 games he did in Phoenix.
No, Brad's going to step right into the Norm Powell role.
Right, and now, but John Collins, I do see coming off the bench because for a couple reasons. One, it's the Clippers, as you said, Wendy, the number one factor for the Clippers is Kawhi's health. If you want to maximize Kawhi's chances of staying healthy, you can't give him the toughest defensive assignment in the starting lineup. And you're not going to give it to Beal. You're not going to give it to Harden. You're not giving it to John Collins. So you've got to get a primary defender in there. And if Ty Lue asks for my advice, I'd say, hey, you start Derek Jones Jr. because that's the guy who can guard 1 through 4. And then you've got Chris Dunn as an on-ball guy coming off the bench. You got Nick Batum, who's still guard on ball, but much more of a thinking man's defender, a hands guy. You've still got really good defenders in the second lineup. Plus, to me, you want John Collins, playing with Brook Lopez as often as possible. I think those two guys, offensive game, is complementary.
Also, it wouldn't be a worth that idea to have
do.
Chris Paul throw some lobs to John Collins.
Right.
That's what
John Collins running pick and roll with Brook Lopez spacing the floor. And then, either way, Collins is going to be paired with a really good defensive center. But you prefer for him to be guarding backups as often as possible as opposed to starters.
Yeah, that's clearly what they're going to do. They'll roll out there with Harden, Beal, assuming everybody's healthy, which is a big assumption with the Clippers. We'll knock on some wood. Harden, Beal, Kawhi, Derek Jones, and Zubac, I'm almost certain will start. And then, again, you've got a second unit of Chris Paul, Chris Dunn, Nick Batum, John Collins, and Brook Lopez. You got shooting, you got multiple guys who can defend there. Like that's a killer second unit. So I think like I said, I'm pretty bullish on the Clippers. I think they've done a really nice job this offseason. Obviously, it's going to be tough for anybody to catch Oklahoma City, but when you look at the work they've done and the way they've deepened their rotation without sacrificing any assets to do so, like I think they've really maximized their offseason and have given themselves a chance to have another really good year.
47.5 is the ESPN bet number.
I mean,
which is odd because they won more than that last year and they're better.
They won 50.
So,
didn't they win 50?
Yes.
I don't give gambling advice. I'll give rotation advice. I don't give gambling advice. But I think
there's also 5 teams. They're 6th in the West in terms of where they rank in their over/under. I will bet the over on the Clippers finishing 6th. Jackson has Thunder, Rockets, Nuggets, Wolves, and Lakers ahead of them.
Actually, I'll give gambling advice if I get to share the winnings, but I'm not contributing to the losing.
The Lakers made a signing over the weekend, landing Marcus Smart after he got a buyout from the Washington Wizards. Lakers with 2 buyout signings, one of DeAndre Ayton and now one of Marcus Smart. And again, I think just like with the Clippers, where you look at bringing Bradley Beal in at $5 million, you look at value. Marcus Smart here is a value addition at they're using their biannual exception of about, was it a 4.7 Bontemps? 4.7 million?
It's 5.1 million.
5.1 million. So they're paying him 5.1 million. So you look at the Lakers use their mid-level exception. They signed Jake LaRavia. They gave him a chunk of it. They gave DeAndre Ayton the rest of it. Well, Ayton was about 8.8 million, I believe. And then they give their biannual to Marcus Smart. So you're looking again an expenditure in the neighborhood of $19 million. And you add 3 players who, in theory at least, should be rotation players, Ayton being their starting center. Bontemps, you've talked for months about the Lakers' need for perimeter defense. Marcus Smart 3 years ago was the Defensive Player of the Year. Jake LaRavia plays wing. Well, Bontemps, are you satisfied?
I was wondering where you were going with that one.
I don't know what we're doing there. I mean, look, here's the thing. Marcus Smart got salary dumped last year by Memphis and just took a buyout from the Wizards. So, and this isn't like a Bradley Beal buyout where Bradley Beal, everybody could agree, is still a good player. I just don't genuinely know what player Marcus Smart is at this point because he basically hasn't played in 2 years, right? Played a combined 54 games the last 2 years. Played 20 games 2 years ago, his first season in Memphis after the trade from Boston.
He's had a crazy series of hand injuries in his career.
I mean, he's been hurt.
Ever since he punched the mirror when he was with
I mean, that was 10 years ago. But
but he's had a lot of hand injuries.
Yeah, I mean, the way Marcus plays, he tends to miss games anyway. I mean, look, this is very simple. If Marcus is healthy and motivated and is anywhere near the player he was during his time in Boston, the signing will be fine. Like, it'll be a good signing for the Lakers. If he's like he was the last couple of years and he's not that effective and hurt, it's not going to be very good. And you could maybe argue Jordan Goodwin will be a better fit for the Lakers, who they've waived to make him sign, to be able to sign.
Let's talk about that in a minute. But just put Goodwin aside for a second. Go ahead.
That's the whole question. Like, is Marcus going to be able to stay on the court? And can he be effective? He's not a great shooter. He's always been a willing shooter who's very streaky. It tends to be
a willing
in
shooter.
The low 30s. But he is a guy that, when he's locked in and healthy and playing well, can be a guy who's obviously an impact perimeter defender. But, it's been a while since we've seen that guy. And even the last year he was in Boston, it wasn't the same as the year he won Defensive Player of the Year. So, I would say I get why the Lakers did it, but I think we need to see whether the Marcus Smart from the Boston days can make it to LA.
If Marcus Smart reports to training camp in shape and ready to roll, which really hasn't been the case the last couple of years, then he answers one of the most glaring questions about the Lakers roster, and that's who's going to guard the other team's best perimeter scorer. Obviously, Marcus Smart, if he's right, is the answer to that. He's certainly capable of that. It's hard to judge Memphis, even like forgetting about the health. It's not hard. The Memphis thing was a disaster. Like, they gave up.
They gave up a ton to get him, and they salary dumped him.
Yeah, they gave up
that's all you got to say.
Picks to get him, hoping he was going to be one of the final pieces, bringing him in for leadership and performance, and got neither of those things and salary dumped him after a second-round rookie took his starting job this last year. I think Marcus Smart was dealing with, professional heartbreak the last couple of years in Memphis. I don't believe he ever wanted to be there. This is a guy who envisioned himself being a Celtic his entire career, and then just boom, he's gone. Then watches the Celtics win a championship the very next season. Jackson says Jackson was out at a bar in Boston, which Jackson loves going to those bars. And when people got the Shams notification, it says there was an audible groan there. Marcus Smart in that purple and gold is going to be tough for a lot of Celtics fans to stomach, but it is an opportunity for him to get back in a situation where there's going to be spotlight. He's going to be in a high pressure kind of situation, and maybe that's what he needs to get his career back on track, because it certainly went off track the last couple of years.
Yeah, and Marcus is still only 30. He'll be 31 in March. And I do think he'll be motivated and ready to go. The bigger question
he's got a player option. He can be he's kind of got if he's ever going to get paid again, he's got to have a good year.
This is a setup for him to get paid, going to the Lakers on a huge stage. Can he bounce back and have a really good year? My question is more, does he still have the same ability defensively, and especially, can he stay on the court? Like, he played 61 games 3 years ago, and he played a combined 54 the last 2. So if he can stay out there, he's got a chance to be an impact signing for them. And like I said, I get why the Lakers did it, but it's, that there's a lot less certainty about this one, I would say, than, like, for example, all the guys the Clippers landed this summer all are coming off better past years or two on the court wise than Marcus has shown.
So I thought one thing about this that I thought was interesting. I know this was reported elsewhere. I checked on it too. That Luka Doncic did some, because I heard Luka recruited him, and I said I want to know what. Because sometimes you hear he recruited him, and then you peel back the layers and he sent him a text. I don't mean Luka. I mean just you hear about players, stars recruiting, and then you hear he sent a text like, "Hey, bro, come to where
we'd love to have you," or whatever.
Yeah, right. It's like when you recruit Bontemps to pickup, you just you let them know the game's going on, but you tell them the wrong time. You can say.
No, I tell them I want you guarding me.
Yeah, you bring those elbows. So I checked this out, and it turns out that Luka called him a couple of times. Luka's over in Europe right now, and regardless of whether Marcus Smart works out, regardless of what the context was, I think the key here is that Luka is acting in concert with the Lakers front office. The Lakers front office obviously targeted Marcus Smart. They knew he was going to get bought out. Several teams were interested in him. The Phoenix Suns, I know, were one of them. And, Luka got the message from the Lakers and followed up on it, apparently several times.
And that is not Luka's natural state. That, like, the first several years of his career, he basically said, "Hey, I play. Front office puts the team together. I don't want anything to do with it." And he didn't grow up in like the AAU culture where you're constantly recruiting guys. And matter of fact, it was news that Luka was pushing for roster upgrades the year after. When was that? It was the year after Brunson's departure, right before they got Kyrie. The news wasn't that the roster needed to be upgraded, and Luka let that be known. The news was that he was actually involving himself in front office discussions, but this is taking it a step further than he has in the past, where he is being a pitchman for the organization. I believe he also had some contact with DeAndre Ayton. And I think that's actually the most significant part of all this, Wendy, because it does show that he's not only on the same page with the Lakers front office, but he is an active participant when, his natural preference has been just like, hey, not my job. I don't want to have to bother myself with that. I want to go hang out during the summer and play for Slovenia.
Well, and listen, if this helps get him to sign an extension next summer, then I don't care if Marcus Smart plays 3 games, right?
If
he's like, get Marcus Smart on the summer, next month is what I meant to say, not next summer.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I would just say that we can talk about the Lakers' need for perimeter defense. We can question how DeAndre Ayton is going to do with the way he's played the last couple of years. We can question about how Marcus Smart's going to do the way he's played the last couple of years. All of that is relevant. The most important things for the Lakers are Luka related. One, does he get into that contract extension? Again, sometime before the season. It doesn't have to be in August. They can offer to him in August. I'm sure they will. Mm-hmm. He may not get into that business until later. McMahon, you have described that, he typically doesn't want to do business when he's doing the national team. And 2, what does he look like when he gets to the season? Because Luka was not Luka last year. You have a number 3?
Well, I do have a number 3. Number 3, if he's recruiting this aggressively for the biannual exception and a slice of the mid-level, what's he going to do when they have max cap space? I would say that's a pretty, if he's willing to, put forth this kind of effort at the lower price.
Who's there going to be to sign?
Well, listen. It all starts with aggregated, but it all starts with number 1. And the rest of it's irrelevant. What Luka looks like in October. Does Luka Doncic sign up for the Lakers long term this offseason or not? If he does,
I think he signs up for the Lakers shorter term.
Well, that doesn't matter. I mean that he's not going to be a free agent. I don't care if it's a 2-year extension or whatever. That doesn't matter. If he signs an extension with the Lakers this offseason and commits to the Lakers, it's the only thing that matters. Because then he's with the Lakers. They can go forward and build with him. Because look, yes, the moves the Lakers made this summer were fine. Ayton was a good signing for the situation they were in. Marcus Smart is a good buy low. We'll see if it works out. Jake LaRavia, same thing. He's an interesting younger player. He can maybe grow with them a little bit. This team is not good. Again, I know Laker fans are going to think I'm a hater for saying this. The Lakers are not that good. They weren't that good last year. There was not a realistic path for them to be a championship contender this year, to go toe-to-toe with the Thunder in the West with the limited resources they had. So the moves they've made have been solid, but it's not about what can they do to catch the Thunder, or what can they do to get in the top 3 teams in the championship chase in the West. I don't think any of that is realistic. It's all about getting Luka Doncic on board with the future and on board with the plan. And if that's the case, the rest of it's gravy.
Quite frankly, the Lakers' goal should be a top 6 team.
Yes,
that should
for
be
sure.
their goal.
If they could do that, they should be very happy.
I hear all that, and if I want to borrow Mac 10's Lakers girl uniform and put that on, what I would tell you is, hey, they were the 3rd seed last season with Luka, a shell of himself.
Right.
Like Luka was out of shape,
right,
and coming off of the worst injury of his career. And look, just judging based on what you see on social media, this is as lean as Luka has been since probably his 2nd season in the league. If this kind of commitment carries over, I mean, Luka's damn sure capable of an MVP type of season.
I think we can put it like
he's one of the 3 best players in the league. But look, the Lakers, the spread from 2nd to 8th in the West was 4 games, and the spread from 3rd to 8th in the West was 2 games. So it doesn't saying one team was 3rd, one team was 8th is sort of irrelevant.
My
goal
point
has
is
to be to just get in the top 6.
They were 3rd with their best player not at his best.
Right. I think I can summarize this. The Lakers offseason will be defined about whether Luka extends.
Yep.
The Lakers season will be defined about whether Luka is back to being an MVP candidate.
Yep.
Correct.
Before we go, I mentioned Jordan Goodwin. It would not surprise me if by the time this pod posts on Tuesday, or sometime on Tuesday, that we find out that Jordan Goodwin has been claimed on waivers by somebody, because I don't think he'll get through waivers. In fact, it would not surprise me if multiple teams put in claims and it comes down to the order. And the reason I think that is because Goodwin had a pretty good run with the Lakers last year, and I think their preference was not to have to release him. The reason they had to release him is to get enough money under the apron to because they can't sign. They can't use the biennial exception and then go over the apron. They have to get under the apron to use the $5 million. So to do that, they had to waive Jordan Goodwin, who had a non-guaranteed contract. They also waived Shake Milton, who they got last year in the Finney Smith deal, wasn't it? Didn't they get him in that deal? I don't remember. Anyway, the question will become, and Bontemps, I'll put you in charge of being the arbiter of this for the next 9 months. Who will have a better year next year? Jordan Goodwin with the team he goes to, or Marcus Smart on the Lakers?
Ooh.
Well, it could be Jordan Goodwin.
Spicy.
I mean, that's, look, like, again, let's see what version of Marcus Smart shows up. But to me, I'm with McMahon. I think the most important thing of all this stuff that's gone on, these Lakers moves are fairly irrelevant in the grand scheme. What matters is that Luka seems to be on board with all of them. That's what really listen, they're good moves. Like, for what the situation they're in, they're fine. But if they're working in lockstep with Luka Doncic and he's recruiting DeAndre Ayton and recruiting Marcus Smart and trying to go get guys and working with Rob Pelinka, they could be trying to sign me, you, and Brian, and it would.
Hey, Austin Reeves recruited Jake LaRavia.
Okay, great. That's good. I'm glad. I know he's your golf buddy. I'm happy.
No, seriously.
Jake LaRavia
was doing an interview, like on a podcast or some streaming show, and he was in a car for like the whole interview. This is like a week before he signed with the Lakers, and he did the interview. It was like 25 or 30. I don't even know, some period of time. It wasn't for 90 seconds, and he turned the camera, and Austin Reeves is sitting there driving the whole time.